The recently discovered Shinan parchment of the Vatican Library in 2001 has brought a level of redemption to the Knights Templar. It does not discount their heretical activities, which were entirely Gnostic in nature, and reveal Johannite and Sufi influences on the Knights. But it does absolve them of these crimes. Let's make some history clear. The Knights Templar were not in whole the Crusades per se. The Knights were, let's say, the special forces of the interests of the Church and like a specialized security force. Not everyone was knighted as in the Crusaders, who were not. In fact, the Knights were not necessarily an enemy of the Assassins, of whom had equal admiration or respect for their level of training and specialized missions. As well, Muslims can and have become knighted in association with the Knights Templar as in the Saladin order, whom himself was knighted as a Templar. The history of the parchment. When Pope Clement V summoned many of the accused Knights Templar to his residence in Poitiers, France, to determine the truth of the heretical allegations against them, some of the highest-ranking knights, including Grand Master Jacques de Molay, were diverted to Chinon, where they were met by 3 cardinals. Their subsequent meeting in Chinon, including confessions by the knights and an ensuing absolution of their crimes by the Church, comprise the text of the Chinon parchment. The Chinon parchment is explicit in revealing that de Molay and the high-ranking Templar official questioned by the cardinals confessed to the heretical charges against them, including sodomy, denouncing Jesus, illicit kissing, trampling and spitting on the cross, and worshipping an idolized head. Many in the know may know this as the Baphomet or goat of Mendes or that of John the Baptist as a representation. Let us remember that the Church in Rome is the first to invent the word propaganda, still in use today. The history of the Templars' heretical rites. The so-called heretical activities that the highest-ranking Templars confessed to are easily recognized as common Gnostic practices that have been employed by many Gnostic sects of the East for millennia. Legend has it that while in the Holy Land, the Knights Templar were initiated into the esoteric rites and teachings of a few of these Gnostic sects, including the Johannite Gnostics who had descended from John the Baptist, and the Sufi Gnostics who were recognized as some of the greatest Gnostics and alchemists of their time. Thus, the rites that led to the downfall of the Knights Templar were only heretical from the perspective of those who were not initiates of the Gnostic alchemical path. For example, the heretical practice of kissing strategic places on the body employed by the Templars during their initiation rite was based on an ancient yogic and alchemical rite that had been observed in the East for ages. Through kissing or touching the regions below the navel and at the base of the spine, it was known by the yogis and Gnostics that a teacher or guru could awaken the alchemical force of Kundalini at its bodily seat. The infamous kisses on the mouth ascribed to the Templar initiators were similarly designed to assist Kundalini activation. When an initiator placed his mouth over that of a prospective Templar, he transmitted his Kundalini into the new brother via his own breath. The other heretical rites ascribed to the Templars also possessed an ancient Gnostic pedigree. The Templars' practice of trampling and spitting on representations of the cross was employed by the Knights because it had been used on some of their earlier Gnostic predecessors as an instrument of torture and death. The Templars' denunciation of Jesus as their savior stems from the legacy they received from the Johannite Gnostics, who for 2,000 years had viewed John the Baptist and not Jesus as the true Messiah and Savior. In fact, the idolized head venerated by the Templars is believed by many historians to have been the mummified head of St. John that the Knights discovered in Constantinople during the Fourth Crusade. And finally, the perceived obscene act of sodomy observed by the Templars can be traced back to both their Sufi and Johannite preceptors. It was both an act of sexual tantra, designed to awaken or further activate the Kundalini that the Sufis had brought back to the Middle East from India, as well as a sacred rite known about during the earliest days of the Johannite Gnostics, when many of the earliest Johannite adepts, including John the Baptist, Jesus, and Simon Magus, all practiced sacred sex with consorts. It was, no doubt, part of the canon of sexual tantric practices that Mary Magdalene and many other temple priestesses of the Middle East were privy to and taught within the nascent Johannite order. Mary Magdalene, who, despite popular culture, was not a prostitute, a noblewoman named Joanna and a healer called Salome were among his close circle. And Joanna, who had been married to an official of Judean Roman leader Herod Antipas' noble clique, funded Jesus' itinerant traveling band. More like high priestesses that taught Jeshua, or is now known as Jesus, during his education of the occult or mystery schools of Egypt, Kabbalah, and of course his yogic guru journeys into India.